Hello and welcome, Star Wars fans, to this week's episode of Duel of the Ranks, a show where we debate takes so hot that they'd melt a planet with twin suns. My name's Brody, and I'm joined by my co-host, Amanda, as we attempt to discover what story is truly the best from a galaxy far, far away. On this week's episode, we're going to be discussing ranks and hot takes from Ahsoka, episodes 1 and 2. By the end of this episode, we'll have a definitive answer on where these pieces of Star Wars content rank amongst the rest. It's out.
It's out.
It's finally out.
Jake's in the chat and says, Happy New Series Week, DOTR.
And what a new series it is.
Whoa. We've been waiting for this one for a while.
People said it was going to be Rebels Season 5. And then it really was just Rebels Season 5. Live action. So far. I mean, the lore, I don't know.
Off the charts.
I mean, yeah, like this is like as Star Warsy as it gets. And that's what Rebels all was. Like creating new lore, building off of other stuff. Like this really feels on brand with the Rebel storyline. And it's like, I'm interested to see what listeners who, if you have any thoughts there on, if you haven't seen Rebels, how enjoyable is this? Because there's a lot baked into that.
Rebels, you're really missing out if you haven't seen it so far. I think, you and I have discussed offline about how your wife turned it on too and isn't necessarily a big Star Wars nerd like you are, and she found it really enjoyable having not seen Rebels. I, however, am a Rebels truther and through and through. Yeah,
I'm calling you a truther.
Yes, I'm standing with like the book of Rebels on the top of my soapbox, preaching to the choir. It is fantastic Star Wars. It gets, I think, a little bit of hate because of the animation style, which I get. The skinny lightsabers really throw people off, but it is a nod to Ralph McQuarrie, who did the original Star Wars drawings. So put some respect on that. But yeah, we are here, and whoa, we have a lot to talk about. First of all, I'm really excited that both episodes were over like 40 minutes long.
I love that that's a standard now.
I know. I was like, please don't be like the first one like 45 and the next one like 22. I was really nervous about that. So
yeah,
the first one was 56 and the next one was like 45 or something.
Well, this first episode, they really came out swinging. Like literally, it reminded me of the like anti-Star Wars episode 1 where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan come down and they're, diplomatic mission, peace. And now these guys are coming in. They're like, yeah, we're here to just wreck everyone on this ship.
Why don't I give them a little summary of our first episode?
Let's do it. What was it about?
All right. Baylan Skoll attacks a New Republic cruiser posing as a Jedi and rescues Morgan Elspeth, who is being held captive on board. Meanwhile, Ahsoka Tano is uncovering a missing piece of the map that is intended to lead to Grand Admiral Thrawn. She faces down several HK assassin droids and takes her discoveries back to Professor Hu Yang and General Hera Syndulla. On Lothal, Governor Azadi celebrates 7 years free of the Empire and looks to recognize Sabine Wren, but she skips the ceremonies to joyride her speed bike. Ahsoka finds Sabine on Lothal and wants her help cracking the code to unlock the map. The two share some animosity as it's made clear Ahsoka left Sabine in the middle of training some time ago. Sabine takes the map with her back to the communications tower, disobeying Ahsoka's orders, and gets Qui-Gon'd by Shin Hati's saber when she has her and her HK droids come to take the map.
What do you think of that first episode?
I was overall impressed. There are a few things that are giving a little bit of resistance to me. The number one thing that throws me off is Hera's contacts. And that feels so specific.
Because it is.
It is very specific because I wanted to come on here and give you all my honest opinion and not trying to be a hater or anything. I want to make sure that what criticism that I give makes sense. And if I could bring like references to other times that I feel like Twi'leks had been represented better. When I think of like Garsa Fwip, or I think of what's her name, Zian, I think it was the purple Twi'lek in the Mandalorian episode The Prisoner. They both have a much more natural presence about them. Like their presence on screen makes sense. But for me, Hera's appearance was very stark and kind of resistant. And I think it pinpoints down to the contacts because they are just so saturated and it's so unnatural. Like it's not even so much that her skin is all green and she has like 2 tubes coming out of her head. It was like her like bright blue contacts, and I'm just like, can we like make it feel a little bit more natural? Maybe I don't know. I feel bad critiquing Hera because I thought Mary Elizabeth Winstead as a performance did great. Hera still has that motherly feel and nurturing about her, but she felt a little stiff, and I think that's because her eyes did not connect with me emotionally.
Well, speaking of stiff, I think there's only one knock I have on either of these episodes where a lot of the characters feel like that to me. Stiff, a bit rigid. Now, I want to say, before I go into this knock here, some quick praise. The technical aspects, visually, this show is stunning. The music is phenomenal. I'm not even sure who the composer is for this.
Kevin Kiner, who did the Clone Wars and Rebels. He comes to Reprise, and I believe he's the original composer of Ahsoka's theme. So he really shines. That is definitely one of the highest marks for me.
Oh, the music's great. Opening crawl was fun.
Yes. Oh my gosh. When the opening crawl happens, I was just like seated and did not expect that.
Oh yeah.
That immediately got me really excited.
And like the props were cool, and seeing that she goes back and like goes to, I forget what the planet, but where the Night Sisters had formed that, wherever she's trying to get that sphere from. And I get that for a lot of folks, it did feel a little bit long, kind of like, oh, we're getting an extended cut here kind of feeling as she's trying to get whatever that sphere is. But overall, I enjoyed it. It felt a lot like kind of like Jedi Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor, like that kind of feel on those planets as you're going out trying to retrieve artifacts, and kind of like a video game in that way. But I'm really enjoying it. The overall story and what they're trying to do to prevent Thrawn from coming back, I enjoy it. But the characters themselves, that's the one area that it's not bad, but it's kind of like they're just there to service the overall story instead of they themselves shining within it.
I absolutely agree. And it was hard for me to even want to say that without drawing a bunch of criticism. But even in my notes, I watched both episodes twice so I could make sure that I truly felt this way. And it wasn't just about like kind of being absorbed by the moment. But I wrote that they really don't gesture. Like they really just stand there with their arms crossed, both Hera and Ahsoka, in many scenes, and just have like slow conversations. And I feel like at least animated Ahsoka is dare I say, a bit more animated. Like when she's thinking of something, like she might use like her hand to gesture, and I felt like we were missing some of like the embodiment of those characters. Like they were just afraid of moving their arms.
Well, and I totally understand and can empathize that there's a degree of difficulty in wearing all of that stuff on you, and having to act and do all this, and it's not natural. And so I give some of that leeway there. And also, this is an older Ahsoka, so she's not, there's not as much range in her voice right now with the emotion and everything else. And
because she's more like, she's found herself, she's been through stuff. She's not the young naive Ahsoka we've seen.
We're Jedi Master Ahsoka. And all I would ask to complement that would be to, or I guess offer a better contrast, is with when they do some sort of flashback, that you do see a much more bright-eyed, young, expressive Ahsoka, which would be great. Now, as far as Hera is concerned, I found her character as a whole just incredibly forced, distracting.
I kind of agree with you, because in my mind, as I was like rewatching the episodes again, I was like, is Hera just like always hanging around, always available to like jump on a call? Like, she doesn't have Jason Sandula on her hip, like he's causing mayhem in the background. She's like, I got to get going. No, she's just always there and always waiting to be called upon. And it feels like, yeah, she's just a character that's put there to get the story revved up. And to another point of that, like 7 years has passed since the fall of the Empire. And we know that Ahsoka has changed, but these first 2 episodes sort of set up that Sabine hasn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's feels like a little bit annoying that Sabine hasn't shown any like growth, but they have to use that as sort of the starting point to gear up the story, to be like, oh yeah, she has to now decide she wants to grow up.
Yeah. And look, that happens with humans and people. That's fine. Like, you know, she's got this rebellious nature, and that's the whole thing. And, you know, she hasn't, as you said, hasn't changed at all in that way. A lot of folks were up in arms that it's how unorthodox it is that Ahsoka would even bother training Sabine, because Sabine's, if force sensitive at all, very like minorly force sensitive.
Yeah, it's kind of implied that she's not at all force sensitive. And I had to pause. Mind you, like I said, I'm a big Rebels fan, and I looked at my husband and I was like, did I miss something? Did we see Ahsoka and Sabine like train? And it felt weird that there was no, I mean, they kind of acknowledged it, but it's just like super vague.
Yeah, and honestly, for me, like it didn't bother me that she's training her, because like Ahsoka in of herself is unorthodox, and like she left the Jedi Order, she could in her own mind be believing you don't need to be force sensitive, you need to be a Jedi. You could have this kind of heart and be this kind of person, whatever.
Or just be a warrior, you know?
Yeah, just what is a Jedi? So I don't mind any of that with force sensitivity and all of these things. Their relationship was interesting. It definitely has like that mother-daughter, or more like I'm this like aunt that you live with and like tolerate. It's that feeling. And so, no, I mean, I think Sabine's character is interesting. I'm not really, as of right now, like there wasn't that first episode where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm hooked. But that to be said, like I remember watching the first episode of Lost, which for today still might be my first episode of any show I've ever watched. And you're not leaving that episode just being like, oh my gosh, I'm so connected with these characters. Right. You walk away being like, that was crazy.
I want to know more.
What's going to happen next? And so with the overall story and where it's going, like from this first episode, what really got me going this one and the second one were the villains. I forget what his the lead.
Baylan Skoll?
Yeah. He was fantastic.
Yes. And I agree.
The whole story, yes, I want to know more. But that was probably the character that I was most intrigued by. And I especially love like how when he looks back on the Jedi Order, it's not like he's this like Sith who just can't stand the Jedi. He's got some level of like
compassion.
Yeah, and like rose-colored glasses for that time. Like, oh, such a shame to kill her. There's so few left. Like, you know, he's just literally a former Jedi mercenary.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like,
so yeah, Baylan Skoll is played by Ray Stevenson, who passed away earlier this year. And that was also one of my big takeaways. I had never seen him in a performance that at least I can remember, but his performance on screen was the most powerful for me.
Yeah,
for sure. He brought a level of like intensity to the screen and real heart, where he seems to have some sort of relationship with the Force where he can kind of start to foresee events happening in the future, where he has like clouded visions of what might happen that Morgan Elsbeth is like relying on him for. And that kind of comes into the second episode. But yeah, he has an interesting relationship to the Force. And as you were saying, he claims like straight from the beginning, we are no Jedi. which was a fun callback to Ahsoka. And then, his apprentice, who I call Goth Joan of Arc. She's cool.
Yeah.
She's super cool. I want to be her. And she got the little Qui-Gon on Sabine, which in my notes, I actually wrote that she stabbed her. But in reality, we all know Qui-Gon couldn't survive that.
Which is hilarious. Like, there's like a guy who like reviews Star Wars, like he critiques it, but he'll like do deep fakes and do impersonations. And like every time someone gets stabbed in Star Wars now, he'll like have like a deep fake of Liam Neeson, and he's like, "Oh, come on!" Like, really? Like, they live? Like, come on, no one survives that.
They invented the technology to heal stab wounds the day after Qui-Gon
just
died.
Bad luck, Brian, over
seriously.
here. Just sad. Well, the other thing I love too, and maybe it's because I love Doctor Who. So, David Tennant.
Yeah, as Hu Yang.
Yeah, and you know what? I didn't even realize he was in Clone Wars. So it's so awesome that they brought him back into this. And it's funny because David Tennant has so much personality that when I saw he's this like droid, I'm like, oh, that's so lame. Like, David Tennant is phenomenal. And then his personality just oozes out of this droid. And I find him like so endearing.
So for those, because we haven't gotten to Hu Yang in our Clone Wars rewatch yet, a little bit about Hu Yang. He is the droid that helps every Jedi put together their lightsabers, and he is like anciently old. He's been around since like the very beginning of the Jedi Order, so he like really knows every single hilt that has been made. So I can't think of a better person for Ahsoka to have on her team. But however, he still doesn't know how to open up this key. All of that knowledge and still no algorithm to figure out. It's like a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, I would love to know how old he actually is. And that's one of the many things about the show that I enjoy. It reminds me a lot of like a Lord of the Rings, and that they have elements like that, and it forces you to ask like so many other questions just by the character's presence. You're like, what about this? What about this? And they're like, oh yeah. And like Morgan or whatever, she's a Night Sister. And like, whoa, like all these other questions that now I have because you said this. And I really love like those elements of Ahsoka.
Definitely. That reminds me, like, the two highest rated segments in this episode for me. And as a reminder, if you're just tuning into Duel of the Rings, we record our rankings on a table that scores the story, characters, technical aspects, music, and immersive universe. We give a score of 1 through 10 and then combine our totals and spit out the official score. I gave 9s for both the music and the immersive universe. The music, we kind of touched on it. We have a little bit of like jungle kind of theme. Then we have this like Ahsoka rock segment, like when she's on her speed bike, which I thought was awesome. I did knock a point because I do not care for the trend of like the Game of Thrones intro, which we get as an Ahsoka outro. The way that the title sequences like pulls you along like this one thing, and like it's very Game of Thrones, like started that trend. And the music itself just feels like it's at that point, when paired with that type of video direction, feels like a bad ripoff. That annoys me.
I've never seen Game of Thrones, so I liked it.
Oh, okay. That's just a nitpicky designer thing of me.
Yeah.
And then, you talked about the Witches of Dathomir. Morgan Elsbeth having being a witch is so cool and so exciting. That's always been a huge interest of mine in Star Wars. I know that there's a lot more in the comics and legends and extended universe about them that I do not know.
Well, is this the first time we've had a Witch of Dathomir in live action?
Yeah.
I mean, technically Mando season 2, but
yeah, knowingly.
That's crazy.
So this is really exciting. We did not have that on our bingo cards.
And we're just in the second episode. Dave Filoni is going to go out of his way to just pull in.
And we only have 8 episodes?
Yeah, I know. Dude, he's going to pull in so much Star Wars lore this series. And just what's crazy is that if he can pull this off successfully and tell a good story from A to Z that people really enjoy, and if he can include a ton of lore that would make so many Star Wars fans happy from Rebels and Clone Wars and some of the original trilogy stuff and everything else, he might pull off. I'm gonna, you know what? No, I'm gonna save this for the hot takes.
Okay,
I'm
good.
gonna save what
Put
I'm
a
about
pin
to
in
say
it.
for the hot takes. But we should go into the second episode. Before we do, we did give this first one a 79.7, which, you know,
That's really high. Almost an 80. Okay, Brody likes to pretend that like we're giving letter grades out here, but if you truly look at everything we give a score, and if you take out, we've never given anything less than like what, a 40. So then you take 40 to 0 off. That's a high score. This is going to be
Not everything can be
the best.
And there's only like 2 or 3 things we've given like a 90 or above. So
yeah.
Like,
and if you want to see them, you can go to dueloftheranks.com and see exactly where all of those episodes rank.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go into the second episode. What was it all about?
Second episode was titled Toil and Trouble. And the summary. Recovering from her injuries, Sabine wakes up in a medical care facility with the news that their enemies have the map. Ahsoka returns to the comms tower to kill the final droid in hiding and take his head back to Sabine and Hu Yang to see if they can source where it came from. Skoll, Hati, and Elspeth open the key and know where to find Thrawn, and their special ship, the Eye of Sion, is almost complete. Meanwhile, Hera and Ahsoka visit the Republic shipyard on Corellia, where the HK droid was sourced to. They catch a ship connected with the droid taking off with a hyperdrive. Hera and Chopper attach a tracking beacon to the ship while Ahsoka fights another HK droid and an Inquisitor named Maruk. Sabine assembles her Mandalorian armor, cuts her hair, signaling her change and desire to join Ahsoka as her apprentice again.
What a cool concept in that episode. It makes sense. We had this giant empire, and now we need humans or whatever. Just, I guess mostly just humans are within the empire, but to do things, to keep things moving. And so, yeah, obviously they would apply for jobs.
Yeah, you need a labor force, and you have all of this like old equipment that you can't just like throw away. It needs to be recycled.
So of course there's Imperial loyalists who aren't just gonna run over to the Republic, and so it makes sense. And so I thought that was a really nice added feature into this.
The way that they like kind of turn and look at the Jedi when they see them come by, because they're like, they got their eye on that.
Yeah, this
not welcome here.
Yeah, for the Empire. Yeah, it did make me question though. It's like, okay, well, if we're gonna be like really involving her, and like it was weird for me to see Ahsoka next to X-wings and other elements like that from I guess the New Republic.
Yeah.
But still, from like that, I always think of the Rebellion. For me, I would love to have answered, where was Ahsoka during the original trilogy? Like, and obviously, like the story was so focused on like A New Hope, like the trench run and everything else. But just what was happening? Like, she could have still been involved, and we just don't really know. But it still would be kind of weird to me if she was that involved, and you see this kid introducing himself as Luke Skywalker. That, don't tell me you don't know who he is if you're in the Republic, in the Republic, the Rebel Force, because he just blew up the Death Star. So everyone knows who this kid is, and he's walking around with a lightsaber that you damn well know what that is.
Yeah.
So if you see it, like whose that is. So what was happening? Because obviously she didn't take the time to introduce herself in that series. So where was Ahsoka?
It's a good question. And I mean, I hope that we get to see that a little bit more, even though I don't think we need Luke Skywalker to come and save the day in this series. I
hope he doesn't, but I was thinking that a lot when there's like all these random things involving Thrawn and like total Jedi business. I'm just like, why is she not calling Luke?
Yeah.
Where's Luke in this? Like,
yeah, it's a good question.
Not even a mention. I'm like, This guy literally...
Her only connection is Hera. That's the only person she can call.
Yeah, like, he blew up the Death Star. And he has friends. With his friends, they did it twice. He technically helped, like, turn Darth Vader, but in everyone else's eyes, I'm sure in, like, the rebellion, they're like, he defeated the Emperor and Darth Vader. That's how everyone else, even though they don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
Not even a phone call. Like, just give me a mention. Like, we should involve Master Skywalker. Like, he's busy. We got this. Like, something.
Yeah, that would be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But again, this is only 7 years after. Well, yeah, since the end of the Empire, which I'm not confident what BBY year is. I mean, it's 7 BBY.
Yeah, no.
No,
yeah,
not the Battle of Yavin.
Yeah, no, I'm not 100% positive myself, but all I know is I want to know where she was during those years where they were making the original trilogy and all that. I want to know what went down after Darth Vader's defeated, because obviously she knows Luke.
Yeah, we saw that in The Mandalorian.
Yeah, so there is that rapport there. So show us, like, when did she meet Luke?
Well,
what was that like?
Maybe whenever Darth Vader decides to show himself in this series, Ahsoka and Luke will both show up and they'll be like...
No, I just want to know. That's all. I just want the...
You know what I want to know?
What do you want to know?
What is Sabine's cat's name?
Fluffers.
I think his name is Stinky.
Why Stinky?
Because cats are stinky in an adorable way. I don't know. I'm just really upset that we don't have a name of the cat yet. And if you've seen anyone on the Reddit threads in all caps asking what the name of the cat is, that is me. I think we can't really move on until we figure that out. It's the most important hole in the story. Which, by the way, the Loth cats, 10 out of 10, best animatronics, best animation, cutest sounds, best series ever of all time. Right there.
They brought them to life, and we went to Lothal, which was on the bingo card. We said we'd go back. We did that pretty fast.
We sure did.
We did that pretty fast. So for the second episode, we gave the overall ranking a 75.1%. So pretty solid. Off to not a super strong start.
Okay, I want to talk about the fighting scenes. Okay. Because that was another area of a little bit of attention point for me, where things felt maybe a little too slow. I was talking to, I think it was Raven earlier on Twitter, that he really liked that there wasn't a whole bunch of lightsaber duels and there wasn't like none. So it was like a nice amount of it. But I kind of wish, especially when Ahsoka is running, to like show how fast she's running, or that she has like Jedi-like speed, that maybe she had like more dust behind her, or when she stopped, like her feet would slide a little bit, or like different little details like that might make it feel a little more mystical. She did have some good like moves, and like she would kill someone and like pose there, right, and whatever. But it didn't have the same weight as I feel lightsaber battles on Star Wars film has. And maybe that's because John Williams isn't behind the action, like guiding your emotions and the intensity of it. Or it's just because Ahsoka hasn't really fought someone that is of her equivalency yet. Like, she's just fought droids. She did fight this, the Inquisitor, but I don't know. How did you feel about the choreography of the fights?
I felt like it was the first time since the prequels that we got that level of style in lightsaber fighting. Like,
The Last Jedi exists.
Ooh, that was rough. No, I tell you what, I enjoy it. Obviously, there's a lot of shots where, like, what was really amazing about the prequels where they pulled so far away that if there were any mistakes by the actors, it was
just like
very
a big
obvious.
landscape.
And so they zoom in a lot. They do hide a lot of those things. they do some things to make Ahsoka look even cooler. Like the very beginning when she cuts that hole in the ground, she uses the Force to do it. So I mean, yeah, that stuff's fine. But overall, I do think this is the first time since 2005 with Revenge of the Sith that we've seen at least this much style, which makes sense because we know not Balin.
Shin Hati?
No, the older guy, the villain.
Balin Skull.
Yeah, Balin. Yeah, so we with him and with Ahsoka being prequel characters, it would make sense why they would have that form style behind them. Whereas Sabine and the apprentice of Balin, their fight seemed a lot more raw, which also again makes sense because of their skill level. So I'll be interested to see that Balin versus Ahsoka fight and how that goes down. But yeah, overall, I mean, there's a lot to look forward to in this show. There's only 6 more episodes, but it's gonna be a ride.
Are you thinking that we'll get Thrawn in like the last 5 minutes of episode 8?
Do you know how many people would be so mad?
Yeah, that would be, I mean, great for Mads Mikkelsen getting that paycheck for doing the minimal amount of work, but I feel like we're starting off the series with the map to Thrawn. It's got to happen at a relatively quicker pace, right?
Yeah. Also, something looking at the comments here, we also have to mention that Dave Filoni, who built so much within Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and yeah, it was George Lucas's vision, but he now has the opportunity, this guy who's amazing at building out lore, to build out lore from a whole new galaxy that he's right now creating.
A whole new galaxy.
Whole new galaxy. Yeah, so excited.
Yeah, that is, and it makes sense that, well, when Elspeth opens the key and shows like this is our starting point and this is our end point at a different galaxy, she talks about how Thrawn speaks to her through time and space, insinuating that the world between worlds is kind of like the method in which you can travel between galaxies. And they've been putting together this Eye of Sion, which is this big ship with all these hyperdrives that looks like it's meant to be a super ship. But you have to think that even something like that would take a long time to arrive to a different galaxy.
Totally.
So I'm intrigued at just this new level of technology and like distance traveling that the physics of Star Wars will have to answer for. Yeah, and I don't know if you saw, but like in the visions or whatever of the key, the Purgles sort of have like their own constellations. So they're almost seen as like, I don't know if this is like their galaxy.
Interesting.
Sentient Purgles.
Yeah, I'm super stoked.